So Al's question is, how complex should the case study bot be? And if I'm not mistaken, what I'm thinking is that what you're asking is how complex should the bot be that you're building for people who may not necessarily be paying you yet, or maybe paying you a lower fee. And I would share that there are two ways to look at this. And I guess the easiest answer is I would make it as good as it needs to be to get great results, right? If you can just create the bare minimum to get and show them results, I would say that that's what's needed, right? Now, I don't want to undervalue making, you want to make sure that it's complete, right? So you want to make sure that it has a way for people to opt in. You want to make sure that it has a way for people to, that there's some sort of what I call the chatbot furniture, right? With, there's something for them to interact with when they get there, and that there's some sort of follow-up and call to action. And so you've got you don't just want to build a bot just to build them a bot, right? You want to build them a bot that gets them whatever desired result that they need to, right? So for example, we've built real estate demo bots in the very beginning where it literally had one flow, or it had one function, one block, right? And the very first time we did it is all right, dude, you're not paying us. So really, we just needed proof of concept. We needed to show that it would work. And so we built and we made sure that, well, first off, okay, what's the number one thing that we needed to get? All right, so we built an ad. We made an ad that worked. And we kind of built it in pieces, right? It's all right, we got the ad working. People are clicking, but, we're not really getting, much traction after that. Okay, cool. Now let's go to the next step. All right, so what happens when people subscribe, and what's kind of the engagement like and the interaction like once they're in there? All right, cool. Well, what we realized is that with, specifically in the real estate space, and I've seen this trend happen a lot in regards to bots in a variety of industries, is that you've usually got about 3 to 5 interactions with the bot before they die out, right? And that's just based on time or whatever it is, but you'll start to notice that if you ask them too many questions, people aren't going to ask, people aren't going to, they're going to fall off. They're not going to keep answering them. But if you don't ask them enough, then you're obviously not going to have the most qualified of a prospect as you can. So it's really this dance of knowing, how many questions, should I put? But the reason I'm saying this is that you don't know until you're testing it, right? And so we're always upfront with business owners when we're in a trial or a test, or it's like, hey, we don't, this part we're unsure of, right? And that could be as far out in the process as possible, right? Like you want to think about your demo bot should help people subscribe, right? Usually through a Facebook ad or through some sort of opt-in, or if they're getting organic traffic or whatever it is. You're going to need to be able to create that interaction to to be able to get their information or get them to click on whatever, or we've even built bots to sell physical products, or sell CDs, or sell it was actually not CDs, sell albums, or sell books, right? Sell events, stuff like that. And then the last thing that you're going to need to do is there's this notification process, right? That's really valuable to clients as well. And so that follow-up process of sending the client like a text message, or sending the client like an email, or sending the client, some sort of real-time notification that they got a lead is what I would consider, you want to make sure that you have it as complete as possible, right? Now, when I say complete, it had one function, right? The bot had one function, one flow. It didn't have any dialogue flow or AI integration. It didn't have, a bunch of different functions or features or anything like that. It literally, the bot was really good at getting people to come in, to click the ad, to get their phone number, and then to deliver a link or a button afterwards, and then to send all that information to the client and, and follow up with them there. So in terms of how much should you include, you're really your number one goal is to just make sure that they get results. And what I love about chatbots is that you don't have to worry about building out too much for what it's worth, right? With the trial period, Because like a website is kind of like, it's challenging, right? Because you put all this time into it, and a lot of times it's very time intensive, but then you give it to the person, you give it to the client, and you've got like really nothing to show for it, right? Like some things are templatable, or like some websites you can make them very templatable, but it's not generally not very, let's call it templatable, right? However, chatbots, because they're so modular, because they're so duplicatable, because you can just click a button and clone one over to the next, to the next business, change out a couple of things, it doesn't hurt to kind of go all out on that trial, because even if that trial doesn't end up working out, right, in terms of becoming a long-term client, well, you still have that in your, let's call it your back pocket, right? To be able to drop in and clone onto the next business that comes along that you do, that ends up becoming a client. So I also you don't need to like worry about, wow, is this too much for a pilot program, or is this too much for a trial, right? Because it's like, hey, if they're not, if they don't become a client long-term, all right, awesome. You just take down the, the chatbot, you disconnect it. They don't have access. Like it's very, you're able to protect that intellectual property. So you don't necessarily need to worry about giving them the farm, because they don't really have the farm. They're just using your farm, right? Your tools. So let's see if that, hopefully that helped you a little bit.